projects that deal with violence is that questions of violence cannot be separated from questions of sexuality. And sexuality, particularly in Catholic traditions or in Christian traditions, but also in Eastern traditions. I'm working with students around gay identities in Thailand. And I learn about the difficulties for gay men to feel good about their sexual desire and be able to feel their own humanity in a culture where sexuality remains unspoken, shameful, not something which is spoken within the public arena. So we have to think about the importance of religious traditions in Mexico Catholicism, not simply in the old Marxist terms as an ideology, but in more intimate terms, in how it shapes the way in which young men and women come to inhabit their own bodies and their own desires, and the difficulties they have in being able to communicate their intimacy in ways that, if we are to confront questions of HIV and AIDS in both the gay and the heterosexual communities, we have to see the importance of young people being able to communicate around their bodies which have been traditionally shamed. In Puebla, a city of many churches, I visited a number of churches, and I was struck by the lists of school students, girls and boys and girls in white dresses, that were confronting images of the tortured body of Christ, bleeding, and the sense of guilt that young men and young women carry for the sins of the world that shape in different ways the way that the body is inhabited and the way in which intimate relations are framed. So questions of religion have become absolutely important, both in relationship to Islam and the ignorance in the West of Islamic traditions, histories, and cultures, but also in the spaces of Latin America with the diversity of Catholic traditions and the difficulties within the secular traditions of the social and human sciences in knowing how to think about different cultures and traditions. Within a tradition of modernity which has shaped our intellectual disciplines, we tend to regard religion as a sign of backwardness. And this reflects, in Mexico still, the treatment of Indians, indigenous communities, that are also excluded and silenced, and somehow exist outside the notion of mestizaje, that we are all mixed. So there are difficult questions which involve learning how to listen to different traditions and cultures and the way in which specific kinds of bodies have been shaped, which speak to the possibilities of transforming men and masculinities. Whether conquest was a game for a dominant white European masculinity, it had devastating consequences that are part of the landscape we speak in Mexico today. Conquest brought the reordering of gender and sexual relations, the notion of the conquista framing a particular kind of dominant masculinity, and the brutal silences and marginalizations of those who were deemed uncivilized because they refused to aspire to Spanish tradition. Whiteness, the category of whiteness, remains a precarious familial inheritance. And I remember a conversation in the car on the way to Cholula with Benno, who does such good work in relationship to young men and health, around the tradition of the family birth and the inheritance, and the way in which whiteness or skin color is watched over with every new birth. Though there is a proud tradition of mestizaje and a declaration